Chapter 11. It was a normal Monday morning until halfway to the shop, I remembered I'd left a stack of paperwork on the kitchen table. Shit, I said, slapping my open palm against one knee. What? Gavin asked from behind the wheel. I forgot the information I have to call on today. You need it this morning, or can we pick it up during lunch? I really should to make those calls this morning. The pieces are on the East Coast. All right. He pulled the truck into the turn lane and waited for traffic to clear before making a U-turn and heading back the way we'd come. He pulled into the driveway and I popped open my door. I was halfway out of the truck when he spoke. Where are you going? Gavin asked with a frown. I'm gonna run in and get what I need. I know right where it is. I don't know. He hesitated. We were just here. You could go in, but then I'd be alone out here. Or we can both go in, but we're already late and it will be quicker if I just run in and grab it. He looked at me for just a second. All right. Hurry. I'll be right here. I got out and hurried to the door, quickly unlocking it before slipping inside. I rushed through the living room and turned down the short hallway to the kitchen. I could see the papers laying on the table. Getting to the table, I reached for the papers and felt something hit my shoulder, as if someone had thrown a rock at me. It stung more than hurt. Instead of picking up the papers, I reached toward my wounded shoulder, but before my hand could make it, the world tilted and went black. I came to slowly. The pounding in my head made thinking hard, and it took me a while to gather my bearings. After a moment, I realized I was laying on my back, arms bound in front of me and legs bent under me. Something was wrong. The last thing I remembered was leaving for the shop with Gavin. How did I get here? How had I ended up like this? The sound of my own breathing echoed through my head. I tried to control myself, keeping my breath slow and even in the hope of figuring out where I was and what was going on before I opened my eyes and possibly gave away that I was awake. There was someone else in the room, but from the slow, deep rhythm of the breathing, whoever it was sleeping. Muted thumps told me that there were others nearby, but in another room. I cracked my eyes open, peeking through my lashes to make sure my ears hadn't deceived me. The room was dim but appeared to be empty. Braving it, I finished opening them and tried to sit up. I couldn't manage it. My body wouldn't do what I wanted. I tried to straighten my legs, but they were stiff and sluggish, as if I'd been laying like this for several hours. Taking a deep breath, I rolled to my side and tried again to straighten my legs. They slowly unfolded. Blood flow restored, my arms and hands tingled and stung as I lay there, staring at the dirt-caked baseboards. I pulled my arms up so I could see them, and found they'd been tied together at the wrists with a thin nylon rope. Using my teeth and enhanced strength, I tugged and pulled at them, hoping to stretch the rope. I worked until I could slip one hand free. After unwinding the cord from my other hand, I pushed myself into a seated position, scooting myself with my hands until I could lean against a wall. Despite the deep shadows, I could see I was in a storeroom of some kind. There were empty shelves lining one wall, and a small square of glass brick in another wall that let in light, otherwise the room was bare. The amount of light coming in the window told me it had to be late afternoon, maybe even close to sunset, depending on what direction the window faced. The room was a nearly perfect prison for me and whoever it was, laying on the other side of the room. Size alone told me it was a man, unless it was a very large woman, because even squinting I couldn't make out who it was. Maybe Gavin. Had whoever it was managed to get to me by taking him first? Between the lack of lighting and only seeing their back, I had few clues who it might be. The strong odor of dust, mothballs, and pesticides made it impossible for me to scent who it was. Working the knot loose, I untied my feet, then wiggled my toes and ankles, urging the blood back into my legs. When the pins and needles faded, I stood and approached the man, cautiously at first in case it was my kidnapper, pretending to sleep. As I circled and got a look at his face, I knew it was Devin. Rushing to his side, I shook him, trying to wake him. He continued to breathe slowly but didn't respond. "Devin?" I whispered, trying to wake him without alerting whoever was in the other room that I was awake. He didn't stir, and when I shook him harder, he flopped almost boneless onto his back. "Shit," I said, my voice still low. "Why does this shit keep happening to me?" I fell back, landing on my ass on the floor, dust flying from the force of my fall. Worried, I tried to use our mental path. I could sense him there but got no details. It was like he was present, but not feeling anything. That had never happened before. I always got some kind of feedback from him, even when he was sleeping. The odd blankness left me feeling bereft and uncertain. I sat there for several minutes, unsure what to do next. A door slammed in the next room, making me jump, then I heard voices, slightly muffled but still clear. "Did you get him?" "Yep." "Any problems?" "Not really." I didn't recognize the first voice, but I thought the second could be Troy. It was hard to be certain, though. I'd only known Troy for a couple of days almost 4 months earlier. I hadn't seen him since he'd tried and failed to kidnap me while we were in Texas. Curious, I eased my mental shields down, trying to pick up any stray thoughts, but I got nothing, not even a whisper of a thought. That was odd. For months now, unless I kept my mental shields tight, bits and pieces of people's thoughts slipped into my mind unbidden. Now, when I wanted to know what someone else was thinking, the ability seemed to be gone. "Karen?" I sent a thought toward the Electo, hoping she would hear me. I didn't know how big the distance between us had to be before she wouldn't be able to hear me. Devin and I had been able to speak telepathically over several miles, but it was possible that being mated made that possible. I waited several moments for a response, but got nothing. "Gavin?" I tried again. Gavin was the last person I was with. Maybe he was close enough to hear me, or maybe there was something wrong with my telepathy. Still nothing. My shoulders slumped and I sat against the wall, wondering what now. Someone would notice that I didn't show up for work. Wherever Gavin was, assuming he was still alive, he'd be looking for me, I was sure. It was only a matter of time until someone found us. I had no idea what our captives planned to do with us. Why capture us when it would be much easier to just kill us when they found us? They had to know that Bill would set everyone he could on our trail. Were they planning to kill us before they could find us? I looked at Devin and wondered when he would wake up. I had no way of knowing how long until it might be until we were found and rescued. I couldn't wait. Someone had to get us out of here, and it looked like I was gonna have to do it. In search of a weapon, I looked at my surroundings once more. The shelves were built in. I couldn't take them off the wall and use them. I went to the window and tried to look out, but the glass block distorted my view. I pushed at the glass, trying to see if I could knock them out and escape that way, but they didn't budge. I didn't see anything loose in the room. That's when I realized that this hadn't been a last-minute prison. They'd cleaned everything from the room that could be used against them. With no ideas left, I went back to the rope that had been tied around my wrists and ankles. Picking it up, I shoved it in my pocket before going back to Devin. The absence of mental feedback from him was disconcerting. I'd gotten used to being able to always feel him, to sense this little bit of him. That missing connection made it hard for me to focus on what I had to do. Being physically close to him helped some. I untied his hands and feet, pocketing the ropes. Then, struggling with his limp body, I tucked my hands beneath his arms and dragged him closer to the darkly shadowed section of the room. I wanted to be hidden from my captors as long as possible while I figured out what to do. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I was aware of was the creak of a door opening. My slumped position against the wall and the weight of Devin's head in my lap reminded me I wasn't in my bed. "Looks like someone's awake." It was the unfamiliar voice I'd heard before. I looked up and saw a man looming over me. He was tall, at least from where I sat on the floor. It wasn't a position I was used to, so it may have distorted my perception. I stared up at him, not sure what to think. I was a little nervous, but I didn't want him to see it. He stared back, the shadow falling across his face making his eyes look like bottomless black holes. He smelled odd, like chicken skin gone rancid. For the first time, I wondered if a person's scent was more about what kind of person they are than anything else. It was something I'd never thought about before. "Where's Stone?" "Brandon?" I asked. "No, his granddad," his voice dripped with disdain. "Who the hell else would I be looking for?" "I don't know." I tried to keep my voice calm. "I don't even know who you are." "Name's Weston Bauer. Know who I am now?" Shit. This was the guy who had been assigned to trail Brandon after he'd had me kidnapped. The one who had instead met up with him and lied to us about what was going on. "I've heard the name." "Good, that'll make this easier. Now tell me where to find Stone." I looked down at Devin, his eyes still closed as he lay limp in my lap, then back up at West. "I don't know where he is." "Bullshit." I shrugged. "Sorry, it's the truth." "He's the Theron, right?" He kicked Devin's feet. "Yeah." "So he's in charge of prisoners?" "Yeah." "Then you know." I couldn't help the half smile I felt forming on my lips. "I'm not lying, I really don't know." "Why would I want to?" I didn't want to think about Brandon, much less see him. "Bullshit. He's your mate and your friend." "Brandon used to be my friend, but this is my mate." I ran one hand along the side of Devin's face, letting it come to rest with my fingers cupping his jaw and my thumb resting on his cheek. "I still can't believe you turned down a good shifter for non-shifting scum." His voice was heavy with disgust. Rage raced through me, and for a few seconds a haze of red tinted my vision. Brandon was never an option for me. I spoke through clenched teeth. I looked up from Devin to my captor. "I couldn't tell you what Brandon felt or thought he felt, but he was a friend, nothing more. I was never drawn to him. He was never a potential mate for me." "Still a non-shifter?" He said non-shifter as if it left a bad taste in his mouth. Devin shifts. I watched the man in front of me more closely. "But he didn't, not for years. There's something wrong with him." I tilted my head to one side and kept watching him. I didn't shift until years after I should have, either. Does that mean there's something wrong with me? I tried to keep my tone serious but inquisitive, as if I didn't already know he was a supremacist. "You didn't know about us, that's different. Though I still don't get how the old man knew you were one of us all this time, and still let you be raised by the humans." His nose wrinkled with distaste at the last word. "Because he knew I was well loved and well cared for," I said. "But humans?" His disgust was plain. "I don't understand why some people think they are better than someone else, because one has an ability that the other doesn't have. It's like thinking you're better because you have blue skin and someone else has green. It just doesn't make sense to me." "Yes, humans. Apparently, they know more about love and being a good person than you do." He growled, and before I realized he was moving, his hand struck my face in a hard slap. "Watch what you say to me, bitch." I blinked as I turned to look at him once more. Pissing him off might not be in my best interest, at least not yet. I needed to get him to go away for a while, give me some time to think now that I knew who I was up against. I looked away and refused to look back. He stared at me in silence for several minutes, then without another word, left. The door slammed shut and the lock clicked as the bolt slammed home, not just the knob but a deadbolt too. The sound told me what I'd suspected. I wouldn't be able to just open the door and leave. If it had been just a locking knob, I might have been able to twist it hard enough to break the lock, or maybe not. It didn't matter, the deadbolt made the mental debate pointless. Alone again, I started planning my escape. Assuming I managed to get out of this room, I couldn't just leave. I couldn't leave Devin here helpless. I was going to have to figure out how to disable at least one of our captors, probably both, long enough to get them bound and trade places with them, lock them in the room we were in now. I couldn't use the rope they'd used on Devon and me, it wasn't strong enough. I thought about it until the last of the light faded from the room. Then I sat in the dark, one hand buried in Devon's hair, his head still resting in my lap. I was starting to worry, why hadn't he woken yet?